Wrong country, old man. Wrong jacket. That's what the biker said before the first punch landed. The 75-year-old Marine didn't fight back. Didn't plead. He just took the hits, held his stance, and never let go of the eagle patch on his chest. The gang laughed, peeled off down the dirt road. But 3 days later, border cameras picked up something else. 5 unmarked jeeps crossing into Mexico. And when the dust settled, one whispered name remained. Fox squad's here. If you believe some units never disband, they just wait. Comment, respect below. Clint Rowen had always been a man of few words. At 7, the retired Marine Corps sergeant moved through life with the same quiet efficiency that had kept him alive through 3 tours in Vietnam. His small adobe house on the outskirts of El Mirador cast a long shadow toward the Mexican border just 2 miles south. Every weekend for the past decade, his rusted Ford F-150 with the faded Semper Fi decal would rumble across the border loaded with supplies for the Refugio del Valor orphanage near Santa Ramona. The children called him Abuelo Marino, Grandpa Marine. He taught them English, fixed their bicycles, and sometimes just sat quietly whittling wooden animals as the kids played nearby. In a world that had forgotten men like him, these orphans became his new battalion, one worth protecting. That Thursday evening, the sun was setting as Clint finished unloading medical supplies and canned goods. Sister Elena insisted he take some homemade tortillas for the road. "You're too skinny, Senor Clint," she smiled, pressing the warm package into his weathered hands. "Yes, ma'am," he nodded, tucking them into his olive green field jacket, the same one he'd worn since '72, now adorned with just a single patch, the Eagle Globe, an anchor of the Marine Corps. The shortcut back to the main road cut through a dusty canyon. Halfway through, the rumble of motorcycles echoed against the rock walls. Headlights swept across the path ahead, illuminating a wall of chrome and leather as 5 bikes formed a blockade. Clint slowed to a stop, instinctively scanning for exits. Old habits never die. "What's this? Grandpa thinks he owns the place." The lead rider dismounted, revealing tattoos crawling up his neck like invasive vines. Behind him, the others formed a semicircle, the stench of alcohol and something chemical hanging in the air between them. Clint kept his voice even, just heading back to camp. "That's so," the man circled, eyeing the pickup's American plates. "Long way from home, aren't you?" Clint stood straight, not defiant, just present. His silence seemed to irritate them. "That jacket yours, you earn it." A different voice now, from a younger man with cold eyes. "Every stripe?" Clint nodded. The first blow came without warning, a fist to his ribs that felt like fire. He absorbed it without sound. "Wrong country, old man. Wrong jacket." Another hit, this time to his shoulder. They circled tighter now, taking turns. Knuckles against flesh, boots against bone. Through it all, Clint remained silent, even as they pushed him to his knees. His right hand clutched the Marine Corps patch on his chest, not in pleading, but in protection, as if the emblem itself was worth more than the body they were breaking. When they finally tired, the leader spat on the ground beside Clint's face. "Next time, stay on your side of the line." The engines roared back to life. Dust clouds obscured their retreat, and in the growing darkness, a 75-year-old Marine knelt alone, bleeding but unbroken. Dawn broke with the sound of a farmer's truck slowing to a stop. Raul Mendoza had been making his weekly produce run when he spotted the slumped figure by the roadside. At first he thought it might be another drunk sleeping it off, but the military posture, even in unconsciousness, gave Clint away. "Senor Rowen, Dios mío." Alejandro helped the old Marine into his truck. "Hospital police." Clint shook his head, wincing as dried blood cracked along his temple. "Just water and a phone." At Alejandro's small farm, Clint refused further medical attention beyond cleaning his wounds. His ribs were likely cracked, his left eye swollen shut, but he moved with deliberate purpose toward the farmer's landline. "You must report this," Alejandro insisted. "Those men, they are Los Infernales. Bad people. They run drugs, girls. The police fear that won't do any good down here," Clint replied, dialing a number from memory. When the line connected, he spoke just 3 words. "Fox, Baja." Compromised, then hung up. What Clint didn't mention was the small black device tucked into his boot, a satellite pager with a single button labeled FQ signal. He'd activated it somewhere between the first punch and the last kick, an artifact from another life, another promise. By afternoon, local police had taken reluctant statements. Officer Santos seemed more concerned with Clint's activities than his injuries. "And what business brings an American veteran to this area so regularly?" he asked, failing to hide his suspicion. "The orphanage needs help," Clint replied simply. "I help." Perhaps Santos suggested, "It would be safer to make donations from your side of the border." The case file was stamped pending before Clint had even left the station. No arrests, No investigation, just another gringo in the wrong place at the wrong time. 3 days passed. At an unmarked warehouse in San Diego's industrial district, lights flickered on at 0200 hours. Inside, 5 men moved with the practiced efficiency that comes from decades of shared purpose. None spoke, none needed to. Edward Kane, 68, former combat medic, laid out field kits on a stainless steel table. Harold Quinn, 72, communications specialist, calibrated encrypted radios to a frequency unused since Desert Storm. Raymond Griggs, 59, the youngest of the group, checked the pressure on specialized tires designed for silent movement over rough terrain. Colonel Mason Briggs, 74, reviewed satellite imagery of the area east of Santa Ramona, marking coordinates with a red grease pencil. And Master Sergeant Jonas Dwyer, 70, inspected each of the 5 unmarked jeeps, his massive hands moving with surprising gentleness across engine components. No emblems adorned their clothing, no insignia revealed their purpose, just 5 old men with military haircuts and eyes that had seen too much to be fooled by darkness. At precisely 0412 a.m., the convoy crossed the border at a decommissioned checkpoint known only to certain government agencies. Their passage triggered silent alarms in federal monitoring systems, alarms that were just as silently acknowledged and dismissed by someone with sufficient clearance in Washington. They drove without headlights, following terrain features and GPS coordinates beamed from Clint's activator. By dawn, they had positioned themselves on a ridge, overlooking a compound, 10 miles east of Santa Ramona, a sprawling collection of buildings surrounded by barbed wire and guard dogs. Motorcycles lined the front of the main structure. Music thumped despite the early hour. Armed men patrolled with the sloppy confidence of those who fear no law. Los Infernales, Doc whispered, lowering his binoculars. At least 30, armed. Colonel Briggs nodded once. Recon complete. Phase 2. Before the sun reached midday, positioned locals in the nearby village of San Mateo reported strange sounds from the direction of the compound. Not gunfire, but something else. Metal scraping against metal. Short bursts of hissing air. The rumble of military-grade engines different from the bikers' choppers. If you believe some calls don't ring, they echo. Comment respect below. By sunset, whispers had become rumors and rumors had become legend. Local police approached the Los Infernales compound with SWAT teams and armored vehicles expecting resistance. What they found instead defied explanation. Every motorcycle had been systematically disabled, fuel lines cut, ignition systems removed with surgical precision. The armory door stood open, emptied of its contents. Computer hard drives had been extracted, cell phones collected. Not a drop of blood stained the concrete floors, yet not a single gang member remained on the premises. In the center of the main room, a single military boot print had been deliberately pressed into spilled liquor. Atop it sat a Marine Corps challenge coin, one side showing the Corps emblem, the other engraved with a simple fox silhouette, and the words, Semper Fidelis, Semper Vigiles, always faithful, always watchful. Police investigators found themselves facing a wall of silence from locals. One officer, speaking anonymously to a Piedra Negra journalist, summed it up. All we know is 5 Americans came in and evil left. The official report cited gang infighting, involuntary evacuation. The unofficial story spread through veteran networks like wildfire. Shadow Unit had emerged from retirement. Meanwhile, at Refugio del Valar, Clint continued his weekend routine despite his injuries. He sat on the porch teaching English to the youngest children. When a dust cloud appeared on the horizon, Sister Elena moved the children inside, but Clint remained seated calmly whittling a wooden fox. A single jeep approached, stopping just short of the gate. The driver, a tall man with silver hair and a scar running from left temple to jaw, stepped out but came no closer. He simply stood at attention and offered a precise military salute. Clint returned it with equal precision despite his bandaged ribs. No words were exchanged, none were needed. As the jeep departed, 8-year-old Mateo tugged at Clint's sleeve. "Who was that man, Abuelo?" Clint smiled, the first genuine smile since the attack. "Just old friends from a different chapter." That evening, as Clint prepared to drive back across the border, Sister Elena handed him a newspaper. The headline read, Los Infernales gang surrenders to authorities. According to the article, 17 members had walked into police stations across Baja California, turning themselves in for various crimes. 9 others had reportedly fled to South America. The remaining members were simply gone. "God works in mysterious ways," Sister Elena said, making the sign of the cross. Clint folded the paper carefully. "Yes, ma'am. Sometimes he works through Marines." The story spread through unofficial channels. Military forums exploded with speculation. Old veterans nodded knowingly in VFW halls across America. The name Shadow Unit trended on social media platforms. though few could explain exactly what or who they were. Some claimed they were a black ops unit from the Cold War era. Others insisted they were a myth created to explain vigilante justice. The Pentagon officially denied any knowledge of such a unit, past or present. 3 days after the incident, the commander of Fort Wallace received an unmarked package containing 17 sets of dog tags belonging to Marines killed in a classified operation in Nicaragua in 1979. The accompanying note read simply, "Debts paid, records cleared." No investigation was launched. No questions were asked. Instead, a new unofficial rule circulated among Marine officers. If a Marine goes silent, don't ask, move. In El Mirador, Clint's neighbors noticed subtle changes. His porch light now flashed 3 times at midnight every night without fail. His mailbox had been replaced with a larger model reinforced and equipped with a keyed lock. And most notably, his old pickup truck now bore a new sticker, next to the faded Semper Fi decal. "We don't call 911, we call Fox." 1 week after the incident, each known address associated with Los Infernales received a delivery, a perfectly folded American flag as if from a military funeral. No note, no explanation, just the unmistakable message that someone was watching, someone remembered. Police reports noted a sharp decline in border crime in the weeks that followed. The few remaining gang members in the region began avoiding American vehicles. Border Patrol agents reported finding abandoned drug shipments as if the smugglers had suddenly spotted something that frightened them more than capture. Local families sent their children with small gifts, homemade tortillas, carved wooden tokens, beaded bracelets, not payment, but respect. On the orphanage wall hung a new photograph, 5 silhouettes standing against the sunrise faces, intentionally blurred. Below it, a handwritten caption, "One call, one creed, one family." The children were taught to stand whenever Clint entered a room, not by Sister Elena's instruction, but by example from the local men. Even Officer Santos, once suspicious, now removed his hat in Clint's presence. In Washington, a classified file labeled Operation Foxfire was moved from active to historical status. The only reference to the Baja incident was a single line, "Resolution achieved through community intervention." The file was sealed with level 5 clearance restrictions, higher than most active combat operations. At the border checkpoint, guards began noticing a strange phenomenon. Aging American veterans presenting their passports would occasionally whisper, "Fox sends regards to no one in particular." These men were invariably waved through without secondary inspection. Back in El Mirador, Clint's small house became something of an unofficial monument. Veterans would drive by, slow down, and offer a silent salute to the porch where an old Marine often sat watching the sunset. He always returned the gesture, regardless of branch or rank. On the anniversary of the incident, Clint found a package on his doorstep. Inside, a new Marine Corps dress uniform with sergeant stripes and a single medal he didn't recognize, a silver fox head surrounded by 5 stars. No paperwork accompanied it, no explanation offered, just a uniform that fit perfectly, as if measured by someone who knew him well. Payment, but respect. On the orphanage wall hung a new photograph, 5 silhouettes, standing against the sunrise faces intentionally blurred. Below it, a handwritten caption, "One call, one creed, one family." The children were taught to stand whenever Clint entered a room, not by Sister Elena's instruction, but by example from the local men. Even Officer Santos, once suspicious, now removed his hat in Clint's presence. In Washington, a classified file labeled Operation Foxfire was moved from active to historical status. The only reference to the Baja incident was a single line, "Resolution achieved through community intervention." The file was sealed with level 5 clearance restrictions, higher than most active combat operations. At the border checkpoint, guards began noticing a strange phenomenon. Aging American veterans presenting their passports would occasionally whisper, "Fox sends regards to no one in particular." These men were invariably waved through without secondary inspection. Back in El Mirador, Clint's small house became something of an unofficial monument. Veterans would drive by, slow down, and offer a silent salute to the porch where an old Marine often sat watching the sunset. He always returned the gesture regardless of branch or rank. On the anniversary of the incident, Clint found a package on his doorstep. Inside, a new Marine Corps dress uniform with sergeant stripes and a single medal he didn't recognize, a silver fox head surrounded by 5 stars. No paperwork accompanied it, no explanation offered, just a uniform that fit perfectly as if measured by someone who knew him well. That night, Clint wore it for the first time standing alone on his porch facing south toward the border. In houses across El Mirador and Piedra Negra, lights flashed 3 times in sequence, a signal repeated, a promise renewed. For in the brotherhood of warriors, some oaths transcend borders, time, and even the laws of men. Some units never disband, they simply wait vigilant in the shadows, ready when the call comes, ready when a brother falls. One call, one creed, one family. Subscribe to Steelheart Stories if you believe real units never leave a brother behind, no matter the border. And so, in the quiet corners of cities and across silent borders, whispers of Shadow Unit continued. For every man who once wore a patch in silence, this story lived as an unspoken bond, etched not in medals but in loyalty, grit, and memory.